We are affiliated with Brigham Young University and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. However, these classes are intended for a general audience, and please keep that in mind if you have any questions that you would want to ask that would pertain to solely a church audience. We can answer that at our virtual chat during the week or at some other time. We would like to thank Spencer for his preparation and time that he gives voluntarily to help us here with these classes, and we will now turn the time over to him for his presentation.
All right. Welcome, everyone. I'm excited to be here and to talk about Photoshop. For those that were here last time, we talked about how to navigate the program and kind of some of the basics. And today I wanted to show you some of the things that people often ask about how to do in Photoshop. So before I do that, I would like to ask if everyone would open up their chat and type in the chat things that they would like to see. That way I can kind of tailor this toward this audience as much as possible. And if you're not sure, I have a number of things ready to show you. So while I'm waiting for things to pop into the chat, I'm going to show you a couple of things that I often get asked. So I'm going to come in here to Photoshop. So I have this photo here with me as a kid. Actually, it's not me, it's Superman. But I grew up in this home, so I happen to know that this picture is backwards. The hallway was actually on the left, and it's helpful that I happen to know this. When you're looking at pictures, you can look for clues, such as the S on Superman's chest. You notice that it's backwards. If you ever come across this, often you'll come across it when you're scanning in slides or things like that. To flip it, you just go to Edit, Image Rotation, and you want to flip it horizontally. Think of the horizon. You have a line going this way, and it's going to flip it in that direction. So flip horizontal, and there you go. Now the image is the correct orientation. One trick, if you're scanning in slides or negatives and you're not sure which way is the correct way, I recommend making sure that you scan them all in the same direction so that, usually there's a slightly more shiny side and a more dull side. Scan them all in the same direction. And then when you're looking at pictures, you can find clues such as, the backwards S on Superman's chest, or writing on a birthday cake, or a sign in the background, or something like that. And you'll know that you either scanned them all in correctly, or that you need to flip them, but then you need to flip all of them. That way, it just helps you know what direction they need to go. Okay, let's see. We have some comments. So cracks from old pictures, resizing photos. That's a great one. Family history photo page with captions at the bottom of each picture. And how to, okay, perfect. Okay, so let's do cracks in old photos. So I have this photo here, and I'm going to show you how to clean this up. So the first thing I would do, I would come down to the layers window down here on the bottom right, and I would duplicate this layer. You can do that by dragging it down to the plus, or you can right click on it and say duplicate layer. Give it a name. I'll just leave it as a copy. The first thing I want to do when I'm looking at a picture like this is I want to desaturate it. It means I want to take all the color out of it, because it was originally a black and white or possibly a sepia photo. And with all the different colors in it, it's going to make it a little trickier sometimes. So I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, Desaturate. So now I have a black and white image. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the Adjustments window right here. And again, a quick reminder, if you don't see these things on the side, you can find them under the Window menu, and you can hit Adjustments or Layers. And I'm going to click on Levels. What this does is it creates a new layer So another piece of saran wrap or transparency over. And this is going to adjust what the level of each color pixel that exists in the image. If I take this right-hand slider, it represents white. Every pixel is represented as a little dot on this histogram. And I drag it to the left, it's going to make everything to the right of it completely white. So if I took it all the way to the end, you'd have a completely white canvas. The black does the opposite, makes everything black. And then the one in the middle adjusts the midtones. So what I'm going to do is generally a good rule of thumb is you want to bring the sliders to the bottom of the hill. So I'm going to bring that one there. I'm going to bring this one up while watching my image until I get something that looks about right. It really helps clarify the image. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. You can leave it like this, and then you can come back later if you decide you want to adjust something more. In this case, I'm going to select everything. So Command or Control A, or you can go up here, select all. I'm going to go edit. Instead of just hitting copy, I'm going to hit copy merged. That means it's going to copy this whole image, all the layers that are applying to it, and then edit and paste. So notice it's created a new layer that includes the level adjustments that I've made. And I'm going to title this one Basic Cleanup. So if I double click on the zoom tool, it will take it into 100%. Often as I clean things up, I'll hit the space bar, which gives me the hand tool that allows me to drag and go to different parts of my image. I'm not moving anything around on the image. I'm just navigating the image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here. I'm going to select this tool. It's the Spot Healing Brush tool. And this tool is magic. It just does magical things. So you select a crack or something you don't like, you let go, and it makes it disappear. Most of the time, this works really, really well. And that's all you have to do. You don't need, special skills. You can just come in and say, I want this to go away. Sometimes it will give you some issues, and we'll talk about how you can address some of those. So I'm coming in here. Now, let's say I wanted to frame this picture. I don't actually want the picture of the frame or the picture of the picture frame. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this spot healing tool, and I'm going to make it really large. So my cursor's up in the top left right there. You can either do it by clicking on the size slider up here, or remember you can use the right and left square brackets. Oops, not right there though. The right and left square brackets to make it larger or smaller. So I'm going to go pretty large here, and I'm going to select this whole section right there and say I don't want it. And it does a pretty good job at making it disappear. Now, you notice some things are a little, you can go over things a little bit and it'll help it clean it up. But anyway, it does a pretty amazing job in my mind. It's not perfect, but so like right here, it has this little artifact. I don't really want that in there, so I'm going to go over it again a few more times and try and get rid of it. Now there's some repeating going on here that looks a little unnatural, and we'll talk about that in a sec. Generally, you want your brush size to be a tiny bit larger than the thing you're trying to clean up. So if I'm just trying to clean this little piece up right here, I don't want a huge brush size because it's going to edit things that were just perfectly fine before. Go back to history. So generally you want it about the size of the item you're cleaning up, but a little bit larger. You can come in and you can clean this up. it takes some time going through. And it's not perfect, but it's pretty cool. Generally, it will do a really good job for you. And you can spend as much or as little time as you want. You can go as detailed or not detailed as you like. You might just say, you know what, I just want to clean up these big cracks. I did a pretty good job on the mouth. Or you may decide, I want to go in and clean up every little thing that looks wrong or weird. Okay. Now I'm going to talk about this shoulder real quick. If you look here, we had the image and it was cracked and it separated a little bit. So this top part of the shoulder actually needs to come down a little. Let me just clean this little piece up right there. Get rid of some of this. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the shoulder. You can use any of the selection methods that you prefer. I'm just going to use the lasso. I'm just going to do kind of a real quick. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just kind of select this broken piece here. All right. And the more you do this, the better you'll get at it. But you're always going to want to fine tune it. Again, depending how much time I want to spend on this, I could come in and I could clean it up a little bit more. I'm just going to grab a little bit of the outside there. You can zoom in and say, oh, that's great, or it's not. Anyway, so I'm going to take that shoulder. I'm going to go copy and paste. So now that's created a new layer. I'm going to title it shoulder. You don't have to title your layers. I think it's really helpful. Click on the move tool and it gives it a bounding box. And I'm going to move it down a little bit so that it lines up at the top. You can use your arrow keys to fine tune that, but it also needs to be rotated a little bit so that it fits that crack. So you can rotate it just by putting your cursor on the corner edge, and your cursor will turn into a little curved arrow like it is on the bottom right now. It allows you to rotate the image. So I think that's about right. So I think that's pretty good. My folds are lining up okay here. I'm just moving it with the arrow keys a little bit. Whoa, and I was too impatient. All right. I feel like that looks pretty good. So that's actually where I want the shoulder to be. I'm going to hit enter, or you can come up here and hit the check mark to say, yes, I've resized it or rotated it, and that's how I want it. So now I want to get rid of this upper part of the shoulder. So I'm going to hide the shoulder layer by clicking on the eye symbol on that layer. I'm going to come back to my basic cleanup layer, and I'm going to grab the clone stamp tool. And this one, remember, you hold down Option or Alt on your keyboard and it turns into a bullseye. You click somewhere where you want to sample from, you let go, and then you click and you color where you want it to duplicate. So this is just duplicating the background from a little ways away. I just want to kind of come into that shoulder a little bit. So now when I show my layer with my modified shoulder, it comes in quite nicely there. The next thing, I'll use the healing tool, spot healing brush. Again, I'll come in here. It's a little big. Let me go a little smaller on that. And you just slowly, kind of little by little, just work your way through the image, just a piece at a time. Notice I am doing this healing right now on this shoulder layer, and I have sample all layers checked at the top. Sometimes I'll be doing it and it's not giving me the result I want. Why is this not working? It's because I don't have that checked. The sample all layers means it's pulling information from all the layers as it tries to heal my image. This line here looks a little, anyway, so you just go through little by little and you can clean up the image fairly nicely. Sometimes I'm a little OCD and I'll spend a really long time, and we don't have time for me to just do this image. Hopefully this has given you kind of a quick look at what that can look like. And I've cleaned this image up. Let's see here. I'll just pop it on top. So I've cleaned it up in the past, and that's what I came up with when I did it before. Anyway, I hope that's helpful for you. Something I always like to do, and maybe it's just it's me. When I think I'm done, or when I get to a spot I want to look and compare, I take my original layer and I duplicate it, and I drag it to the very top of my layers palette. That way I can hide the original and see where I'm at. Sometimes that helps keep me from, sometimes when you're cleaning something up, you'll actually mess something up, but you don't realize it because you're zoomed in and you're real close and you think you're cleaning it up. And then when you look at it from a distance, comparing it to the original, you realize, oh, maybe I messed something up. Anyway, if I were still working on this, I would actually come clean this up a bit. So, you know, that doesn't look natural in this bottom right corner here. But anyway, I hope that's helpful for you. The next thing I want to show you, and I'll just keep using this image for this. So right now, this is cropped to a, oh, let's see, what's my image size? So this is cropped to a 4:6. So if I wanted to print this 4:6, that's perfect, that's great. But what if I wanted to print it 7:10? So if I click on the crop tool, I can select some standard sizes. 7:10, that's not a standard size. 5:7 is what I meant. So let's say I want to crop it 5:7. So this shows that it's going to take some off the top and the bottom. So I can choose where I want that to fall by moving it in here. Generally, rule of thirds, you kind of want the eyes to be on one of the third lines. That's why it gives you that grid. Not always, though. You know, you're the master of the photo that you're working on. So you decide what looks best to you. And then again, I can check this delete cropped pixels, which means once I hit enter, or once I hit this checkbox, then it will be set and I'll lose the data. If I want to keep it in case I decide I want to come back in and recrop it off the original, I'll leave it unchecked and hit OK. So now the image is the correct size. If I come into image size, I can now see that it's 4:5.6. Oh yeah. So I cropped it to a ratio of 5:7. But if I want it to print 5:7, I want to come to image size. And now that it's the right aspect ratio, I can hit 5 and it's going to say, oh, and make it 7. If I don't have resample checked and I hit 5:7, it takes my resolution down from 300 to 240. And that's probably okay for most things. If I want to resample the image, I check resample. And I would change it back to 300 because that's kind of an ideal pixel per inch. And I like using Preserve Details 2.0. You can use whatever you like. Automatic does a pretty good job as well. So now I have an image that would print really nicely 5:7. So you can do that. Often I'll save an original document as a Photoshop document. So when I go to save, it'll say, what would you like to save it? So I'll save it on my computer and I'll say, save it like this as a Photoshop file. .psd is the extension. That allows me to come back in later and I can adjust any of the layers. I have access to everything I've done, so I can tweak it. I can go back to the original. But when I'm ready to share it, what I want to do is I want to come up here and go save as. And it only gives me a few options here. So if you look here, it'll say save a copy. And then it gives you a lot more options. Most people, most of the time, you're going to want to save things in a JPEG format. And because it's the most versatile format, most people are familiar with it. You can use it online. You can, send it to people. And that's a great format. So it's saving it as an original copy. That's great. I'm going to hit save. And it will, when you save things as a JPEG, it comes up with a dialogue or a similar dialogue to this. What quality do you want? Generally, I would do high. Usually I'll save mine at 8. Sometimes I'll say, oh, this is really important. I'm going to save this one at maximum. The reality is it's not going to make a huge difference between an 8 and a 12 unless you keep opening it and resaving it. And so sometimes if you open a JPEG and you resave it, you do save as a JPEG, save as a JPEG, save as a JPEG, then you'll start to get what's called JPEG artifact in your image. Generally, it will show up in areas that should be one solid color, and it'll look blocky or pixely. And so unless you're going to be opening an image you've already saved as a JPEG and resaving it and opening it again and resaving it, you're probably going to be okay. So I'd recommend about a quality of 8 or higher. 12 you can do, but it will also make the file size significantly larger. So go ahead and hit save there. So hopefully that answers some of the questions. Let me look at the chat again and look at this. So we had fixing cracks, resizing.
How can I, Ellerfield, how can I make a family history photo page with captions at the bottom of the pictures? One.
Perfect, great. We'll use this one as well. So on here, I'm going to set my colors, make sure my background color is white. Let's say I want to add the caption without messing up the actual photo itself. I don't want to write something over the photo. So if I want to do something like that, I would come up here to image, go to canvas size, and I'm going to select inches. So because I think in inches, right? So I'm going to select inches. Let's say I want to add another inch on the bottom. So I would say the height is 7. Now the height is going to be 8. The anchor, if I leave the anchor here in the middle and I hit OK, because the width is staying the same, nothing's going to change there, but it's going to split my extra inch that I added on the top and the bottom. So I probably don't want that. So I'm going to click the anchor on the top, which means it's expanding, and so it's going to expand it down. So I'm going to hit OK. And now if I zoom out, I have space down here at the bottom. If notice it has this checker pattern, that means it's transparent. So I'm going to create a new layer and I'm going to fill it with white. Edit, fill, and I'm going to select, you can select your foreground color, your background color, select a color, but I'm going to select white. The whole thing. I'm going to drag it down to the bottom. So it's the very bottom layer. That way, I have a white background there. And then I can click on my text tool. I can pick whatever color I like. So I'll keep it black for the moment. And I'm going to click here. Whoa, that's super huge. I must have been doing something. My font size, let's hit 24. And let's say I really like Arial. And I'm going to type in Emily Westerfield, because that's her name. And then I can move it around wherever I like. Notice as I'm moving it, when I get right here, it kind of snaps into place and gives me a line down the middle. That's telling me, hey, this text is now centered. So that's really handy because sometimes I'm not the best at eyeballing it. So it's now centered, on the center of the photo. So I could do that. I could add other information if I wanted on the photo. But Spencer, you say, that's great, but you just messed up your nice aspect ratio. I still want to print this 5:7, and now it's not going to work. So in that case, I would come back up to my crop tool. If I still want 5:7, I'm going to have to figure out how I want that to work. So if I click here, I can see, oh, I can fit all of it, but maybe that's not enough headroom for me. So maybe I want to move it down lower, which means I'm going to want to move that that text I did up a little bit. So maybe I won't have a full inch on the bottom, but I think that looks okay. So now I'm going to move that up. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller text because so that it fits a little bit better. If I had more information, I could add more, like, a location or a date or something. Anyway, so that's one way you can do it. Again, there's probably other ways, but now if you were to print this, it would print 5:7, and it would have her name at the bottom of the photo without covering anything up. Now with this photo where it does fade, you could, if you wanted to, write something here. You could write it here. And you could select a different color. Maybe you wanted a almost white, but not quite. So you could do something like that instead of, having it. Personally, I like adding to the photo so it doesn't, actually disrupt the photo in case you want to use it for something later on. And now I'm doing a slideshow and I really don't want the name on the slideshow because it's all images of Emily Westerfield or something like that. Anyway, hope that answers that question. Let's see. Oh,
Someone asked, my sister scanned complete pages of her photo album, and I've had this come up too. Some of them had multiple pictures. So how do I deal with creating individual pictures from that page?
That's a great question. Let me see if I can grab one really fast so I can think of where I have one saved, because I have some that fit that criteria. Let me see. Photos, nope. Oh, you know what? It might be in the box. Well, if I can find them, I'll just make one up for you so you can see it. Oh, here we go. Family journals. Let's see. Let's see what this one looks like. I'm not sure what this one. Copy it here. Oh, that only has one photo. Let's try and get one that has a bunch of photos. I grabbed the wrong photo journal. All right. Great, perfect. Okay. So we have some photos here. The quickest way is to use the rectangle marquee tool. You come in, you select each one, and you can take more time. You're making sure you get it how you like it. And then I'm going to copy and paste it. So I'm going to copy, then I'm going to go file new, and Photoshop automatically by default will say, oh, let's do a new size based on the clipboard. So the thing you just copied. So I'm going to hit that. I'm going to hit paste, and there it is. I might want to come in here and get rid of that. So if I did, I'd come in and use the healing tool. It might not do what I like. I might leave it depending on what I'm doing, but great, call it good. And then you just save the file. And then you close it, go to the next one, select it, edit copy, file, new, clipboard, paste, save it. Anyway, that's how I would do that to break up a collage. So.
Okay, Kirsten is asking, I have black and white photos from the 50s that seem too dark.
Oh yeah,
Any help?
absolutely. Let's continue with this image. I'm going to cheat and make it too dark for a second. Let's just, let's try this again. Brightness, contrast. Okay, so let's say we have a really dark photo here. So we have a dark photo here. And I'll show you this on another image as well. There's a couple different ways. If you click on your adjustments panel, you can click brightness and contrast. That should make it look pretty good because that's how I darkened it. You can use brightness contrast. It's not my favorite way to do it, but it's something you can play with, and you can usually get pretty good results. The other way to do it is to use the levels. So I come in here, I hit levels. Often you'll see your histogram like this. If you slide the right side into kind of the bottom of the hill, slide the left one into the bottom of the hill. Generally, that'll work pretty well. This one, it's washing it out, so I wouldn't actually do that on this one. But generally, it's a really good way. Let me show you this on a different picture. Let's use this one here. So this picture, I took it. This is straight out of my camera. It's my daughter. She was in the shade, so it was just kind of dark. So that's just kind of how it came out. I'm going to come in here to adjustments. I'm going to click on levels. You can always hit auto. Sometimes I'll just hit auto and see what it does. Sometimes I like it. Sometimes I don't. If you want to do it manually, if you don't, let's say you don't like what auto did, then you can bring in the sliders until it gets to a spot you like. Generally, this works really well on older photos. The thing I like about this better than the brightness contrast is it gives you more flexibility, because I can adjust the light end of things, I can adjust the dark end of things, and I can adjust the midtones. Another thing you can do, let's start over here. So adjustments, levels. I also do this to color correct. So if you have pictures that are miscolored, I wouldn't say this one here is particularly miscolored, but it's just so dark. It doesn't really represent what I remember seeing when I took the picture. So instead of adjusting the RGB, which stands for red, green, blue, you can adjust each color channel at a time. You don't have to understand what all that means. Just know that red light, green light, and blue light come together to form white light, and it's a manipulation of light and color. So if I bring this to the bottom of the hill for each, now this one there's already a ton, so it goes up to the top. I'm going to leave that one where it is. Green, I'm going to bring the light end in, and I'll bring that one in a tiny bit. And blue, I'm going to bring that left end a tiny bit, and the right side in to the bottom. And to me, this looks a whole lot nicer than that. So not only will it lighten the pictures, but it will also color correct for you. Another image you can look at. So this one for color correction, I'm going to do the same process. I'm going to select each color channel. I'm going to bring in the handles there on the ends. to the bottom of the hill on both sides. Red, green, and blue. And it's kind of like magic. There's the original, there's your other. Now, if you're doing black and white photos, you're not going to need to adjust the red, green, and blue as much, but that's one way. Another way, I do want to show you this one. I'm going to duplicate my original photo here. So I'm on a new layer. I'm going to go to filter and I'm going to select camera raw filter. Now, this is a really powerful tool if you take pictures with a digital camera in raw format. But even if it's not in raw format, even if it's a JPEG, even if it's a TIFF, if it's something you scanned in, it still has some powerful tools all in one place. So it opens up the photo in this, it's called Adobe Camera Raw. And it allows you to adjust a bunch of things at once. Almost always I'll hit auto and see what it does. Sometimes it does things I like, sometimes it doesn't. But on this image, I want to adjust the exposure, which is how light things are. I'm going to adjust the contrast a little. My highlights are the lightest parts of the image. So dropping that down will make things show up. Often if you have a sky with clouds in it, if you drop your highlights down, it'll make the sky more blue and the clouds more visible. My shadows, I'm going to brighten my whites. That's pretty good. My black point. But the other thing is you can adjust your color balance. And this is super awesome. I can hit auto, and I think that does a pretty good job. I'm going to tone it down a little bit here. But I can manually adjust it by changing the temperature and say, hey, you know what? I think that looks most natural. Or you can hit this eyedropper tool, and then you click on something that's neutral. So either black or white. So if I click on the white up here, it matches. If I click black, it should match it. So both of those are actually pretty good color. If I hit the white on the shirt, or sometimes you can hit like a gray, but sometimes I'll hit the white in an eye. Usually that will do a pretty good job at finding the color balance for you. Or you can adjust it yourself manually using this temperature slider and the tint slider. Anyway, so that's for color correction. But even if I were dealing with black and white, if I come up here on the top, if I hit black and white, it makes my image black and white, and it allows me to adjust these different pieces until, in a black and white photo, I might want higher contrast, for example, than I have in a color photo. Anyway, so you can adjust a lot of things at once. You can also adjust some things down here. If you have an image that is really grainy, this one probably is not, but let's see. Oops, that's not what I meant to do. Let's see. They've moved tools recently. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in 100%. Sometimes you'll have an image that's grainy. This one's not, so maybe I'll find a different image for you. But if it is grainy, if you hit detail, you can smooth out some of the color grain by moving this noise reduction. If you go too far to look plastic, so you want to be careful there. But if you have a really grainy image when you zoom in, you can adjust these sliders, and you can smooth out some of that color grain. Okay, and then you hit OK, and then your image is done. I end up canceling my stuff, but I hope that helps with that question. Is Photoshop a free program? It is not a free program. Photoshop is done through a subscription through Adobe. If you just do Photoshop by itself, it's $20 a month. So I recommend you use the photography plan, which is $10 a month, and you get Photoshop as well as a program called Lightroom. It's half the price. You get 2 programs for it. Even if you only use Photoshop, it's still half the price. Anyway, that's what I would recommend if you just want Photoshop. But it is a subscription program. There are discounts for students and teachers or businesses, so you can check those out there. The other option is there's Photoshop Elements. If you don't want a subscription, if you just want to buy it once and have it, you're not going to get as many updates and things to it, but it'll be a solid program that should work well for you. Usually it runs about $100. Today, I don't know how long they're doing this for, but they're doing a sale for $69 for it. Or if you want Premiere Elements, which allows you to do video editing for $100. Anyway, those are two options for Photoshop. There are also free versions, well, not of Photoshop. There are other programs that work very similarly to Photoshop. A couple are Pixlr, which is all web-based, and you can just upload photos and use a lot of the same tools that I'm showing you here, a lot of the same principles. Almost any of these photo editors will have levels and things like that, cropping tools, healing tools, and also GIMP. GIMP is a free program. It's a program you actually download on your computer, and it's cross-platform, so it works on Windows, Mac, Linux. Anyway, so those are some alternatives to Photoshop if you don't want to go out and buy it. Also, sometimes libraries near you may have Photoshop available on their computers, or your place of employment, or if you're a student. Often Adobe works a lot with schools to get access in that way.
Dan is asking, I have Photoshop 2020. When and why should I consider upgrading to a newer program?
That's a great question. I'm cheap, so generally, I use Photoshop CS2 for I think when they were on CS7, and I was still using 2. The reality is you can use it for a very long time. If it works well for you, if it does what you like, you don't need to go and upgrade. They do come out with new tools that make things easier. For example, if I were, we'll see how this one works. So if I were here and I wanted to select Superman here, I could use the object selection tool. This is a relatively new tool, but I select this, and in theory, yep, it selected Superman. Not perfectly, but it did most of it pretty good. It did a pretty good job there. So if I hit copy paste, now it's on its own layer. So there's a few things to clean up, but it did it without me having to drag anything around anything. So for example, if that's not in your current version and you think it's going to be really helpful for you, go ahead and buy a new one. But if it's not, or if you're like, I'm happy using the tools that I have, it's not worth $100 or whatever, don't worry about upgrading. So, okay, other questions. Okay, that looks like it for the moment. So let me show you a couple other things that I prepped for. So let's say that you have, let's see. Okay, so here's a family reunion picture. Let's say I think this is the perfect picture, except my daughter isn't smiling in this picture. I'm sure many of you can relate, but like all family reunions, you probably have 20 or of the exact same picture sitting right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my file and I'm going to drag and drop it on top of the other file. What this did is it opened the file as a layer on top of my original. So let's say this is the image I want to use. Everyone's looking except my daughter. Not a true statement, but let's just say it is. So then I come in here and now I click on my second layer. That's the one I want to use. I think perfect. So the easiest way to do this, well, there might be easier ways, but the way I like to do it I select the layer where I want just her face on it. And on the bottom here, I click on this white rectangle with a dark circle in it. And if you hover over it, it says add a layer mask. So what it did is it created this mask to the right of the image. So if I click on the image, you can tell it's highlighted in my layers panel. If I, were to take my brush tool and start, scribbling away. Oh, okay. Start scribbling away. It's going to do exactly that. Undo. I don't want that. But if I click here on my mask, what a mask is if there's something black, it's going to hide it. If it's white, it's going to show it. So if I start coloring in here with, here, let me go, oh, it's white. That's why. So now I have my brush tool. I have black as my foreground color. If I start coloring in, it's gonna hide this top layer. So what I want to do is I want to hide everything except my daughter's face. So I'm going to go to Edit, Fill, Black. So now my mask is completely black. So it's just like hiding the new layer I added. I'm going to go to my brush tool. I'm going to make the foreground color white. I'm going to make sure my brush tool's hardness is at 0% hardness. I want it to have a really fluffy edge, an undefined edge. Then I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to just kind of paint over my daughter's face. Great. That is how I want it. Now, notice her shirt kind of came through here. So I could either come in, I could switch my colors. You can either hit that little switch-aroo on the left-hand side on your color selection, or you can hit the X key. We'll switch them. So if I could come in and I could, get rid of the shirt there, or I could decide, you know what, I want to keep that shirt, which means I have to come down a little bit further, kind of clean some other stuff up here. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. I'm going to hide it. I'm going to show it. Okay, so maybe I like that. Maybe I don't. If I don't, I can, the nice thing is I can come in, I can switch my tool. So it's non-destructive. I could erase stuff, but once you've erased it, you can't get it back easily. But using this masking method, so maybe I like that. That looks good to me. The only thing that's changing is her face and her smile. Perfect. I'm good with that. Anyway, and so her cousin is looking the other way. I can do the same thing here. So pop it in, create a mask, fill it with black. Come over here, grab my brush and brush with white. And this one gets a little more challenging because her hands are in a different position. So if you do something like this, you have to be careful and pay attention. Okay, that means I need to get rid of, make sure that you don't have an extra hand or something, because that happens sometimes. So anyway, great. I think that looks pretty good. So now here's my original, and I fixed the two people that weren't looking. So anyway, hope that's helpful for you. Let's see. And that's about all I have planned for to show you. Is there any other questions or anything anyone else wanted to ask? Happy to answer questions.
I don't see any additional ones that we didn't catch right now. Oh, wait, here's two new ones. Oh, comments for you.
Oh, thank you. I hope it's helpful. I think it's super fun to be able to clean things up. I use Photoshop a lot for family history when it comes to photos. What do I know about Luminar AI? I've heard about it. I've seen it, but I have never used it. So I really can't speak to that. Speaking of AI, there's a lot of cool stuff that's happening. I mentioned last time a little bit about My Heritage. There's a lot of these programs that can do a lot of this same stuff where it'll make things easier to see and can actually smartly like reconstruct faces from the past. And anyway, it's kind of cool. How do I fix the Superman photo to eliminate the entire background? Yeah, so if I wanted to, I could come in here. So this is on a layer. I could either do a mask like I just had shown before. Again, black makes it disappear. And so I can, come in like that. Well, what I would honestly actually probably do is I would probably come in here. I might select it, if I used the object selection tool, I would, before I copied it, I would actually come in and I would clean up my selection. There's different ways you can do that. I can use the lasso tool and I can hold down Alt or Option, and it gives me a negative, and I can say, I don't want to include that. You can do what's called a quick mask by typing Q on your keyboard. No, maybe they changed it. It's right here though. Instead of using a selection tool, I can use a brush tool. Anything that's covered is going to be not selected. So if I again go to white, I can, let's see, so maybe I want to include a little bit more here, or maybe I don't want to include my feet at all, or my uncle's hands. So instead of selecting, you can color, and right now it's set to red. You can change that, and when you click it again, it modifies the selection based on what you colored in. But that's how I do it. And then I'd copy and paste it into a new layer, and then, put it in the sky and, rotate it or something like, oh, I'm flying. Anyway. I thought of one more thing I could show you. I have a couple minutes if you want to see it. Let me show you this. So a lot of times you'll have a photograph that was taken from a newspaper, and you can select it. I'm going to copy, new, okay, paste. I'm going to come up and adjustments, desaturate, so it's black and white. I'm going to duplicate it and come up here to filter, blur, Gaussian blur, because the newspaper uses halftone where it alternates black and white and puts them closer together to create your colors. A Gaussian blur does a uniform blur throughout the image. So you can come in here. You want to blur it enough that you can't see the lines anymore. But that's too much because now the features are a little blurred. So you can duplicate the layer again. You can use your sharpen tool, and you can kind of come back in here and you can sharpen features such as the eyes. Just keep running that sharpen tool over it until it gets to where you like it. Maybe a little bit on the details of the nose, for sure the mouth. That tie I want to sharpen. Anyway, you can sharpen some of the details in the hair. I would use the healing brush tool and just run it along the edges to clean up the kind of that white edge because it wasn't a perfect crop. Anyway, so just real quick, that's a quick and easy way to get rid of that halftone pattern that exists when you scan in from old newspapers and things. Anyway, hope that's helpful for everyone. And I'm happy to stay if there's other questions.
I think you got them all, and that was wonderful.
Great.
Great presentation.
Thank you so much. Happy to help.